Hiya, my name's Emma and welcome to my brand new channel where I'm going to attempt to turn my regular sized mid-terraced garden into a place that is kind of an allotment substitute. Last year I missed out on sharing an allotment with someone. Since then I've been thinking about how I can turn my garden, which has so far been semi-productive. You know, I've got a couple of apple trees, I grow things in pots, but a very normal garden with very little produce, into something that can feed my household of 2 people and a cat as much as possible. So with that in mind, let's nip out. I'll give you a quick garden tour and then I'll show you the plans that I've got for this space. So this is my space. It is a garden of a mid-terraced house in Sheffield. It's not exactly square or rectangular, it's wider at the end and narrower towards the house. And at the right hand side at the end, the garden doglegs slightly to accommodate an outbuilding. This area of pebbles runs down the length of the garden and it's where I'm hoping to get a bit of growing space. I'm going to take all of these pebbles up and this is going to be a long strip of land where I can grow vegetables. Granted, it's not very big, but it's using up space that is kind of going to waste and doesn't really serve a purpose at the moment, so it's going to be better than nothing. This year we fixed our fence, which had blown down in one of the many gales that we've had, and we've made it into this trellis affair, which I'm hoping to grow beans and peas up. This is the area of the garden that doglegs to the right. I've got a little log store here, and this is my little shed. Used to be an outside toilet before we moved in, but eventually it will become good tool storage. Last year we made our log store a better place for also growing things. In the winter it's a log store and in the summer it's a growing space. So we removed the wooden roof and replaced it with see-through corrugated plastic. And last year we grew a bunch of tomatoes in this space. It gets a lot of the sun, and this year we're hoping to do exactly the same. We fixed the sides of this log store with old charity shop frames. They do need a bit of replacing, but it helps to make that greenhouse effect. It's also a brilliant place to capture rainwater and proved really useful last summer. In the bottom left-hand corner of the garden, I've got a compost bay system. Last year I increased it from 1 compost bin to 2, so now we've got a bit of space to turn compost. I'm still getting used to the process of how to do this, when to do this, but I really enjoy having a compost bin system in the garden, and it's a good way to get rid of all those veggie scraps from the kitchen. Now my garden's only small, probably about 8 metres by 5 metres, give or take because of the weird shape of the garden, but I wanted to have a pond and I managed to find space on the very small lawn that we had to dig a very small but mighty pond, and we've already had quite a lot of wildlife in the garden because of it. Earlier I mentioned that I do already have a bit of produce in the garden already, so let's go through some of the things that I've already got. First of all are 3 blueberry plants that I've got growing in pots. They're really productive. I planted them up with ericaceous compost and they have been providing fruits every year consistently. They're a really good addition to the garden. I've also got 2 apple trees in the garden. The one on the left is about 2 years old and the more established one on the right is probably about 5 or 6 years old now. I've trained them as espalier trees, so just trained them against the fence, and they also provide fruit year after year, although mostly the squirrel gets them, which is fine. As well as my fruiting trees and bushes, I've also got things like herbs and a few straggly strawberry plants that have been hanging on for quite a while. As well as those things, I've got one avocado plant, which I found growing in the compost bin. I've got some old kale plants, which have overwintered in pots from last year. And then I've got some flowers and non-edible plants. I'm also lucky enough to have a bit of space, not a lot, but a bit of space in the front garden area, which I'm hoping to utilise for things like maybe rhubarb, maybe squash, maybe peas, who knows. Follow along on the journey and we'll find out together. Currently there's a bunch of flowers in there. I've got lavender in pots. There is a bit of sage in the front garden and there might be a few self-seeded wild strawberries, but mostly it's non-edible stuff. Just nice flowers for the insects. I'm not going to get rid of most of the flowers, but I'm hoping to incorporate a few crops in there because it does get quite a lot of sun. So even though it's January, there are some things that I can do. So I'm going to sow some seeds. First off, let me show you what I got. This isn't a tin of cookies. This is a tin of the seeds that I bought for this year. I might have went a bit overboard, but it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. And I'm going to do a bit of a seed swap with one of my friends who's got an allotment. So someone's going to get use out of all of these seeds. Hopefully, me as well. So first let me show you what I've ordered and then we will plant a couple of seeds to be started off indoors. So let me go month by month and show you what I've got. January, onions. I've got Pompeii Early White Bunching Bulbing Spring Onion from Real Seeds and Musona Onion from Tamar Organics. These can be sown at 2 times of the year. So this one says either you can start indoors in January, February, which is what I'm going to do, but you can also sow them outdoors after the 18th of August, this one suggests, not earlier, crucially, for overwintering onions that you can get big bulbs in early spring. These ones, it's got 2 sowing times, so January, February, March, or again in August. So that's what we'll be sowing today. Let's just quickly go through the other things that I've got. So this is February. Anything with a pink highlight is stuff that I've had from previous years and might have gone past their best before, but worth giving a go because you never know. But it's worth knowing which ones are the old ones and which ones aren't. So at the log store at the end of the garden, which we've put a see-through roof on for the purpose of growing tomatoes in, we will be trying to grow the organic Prima Bella red vine cherry tomato, Chadwick cherry vine tomato, purple Ukraine large vine tomato, and from last year we've got the Wenzel short vine tomato, the tomato de Colgar storage tomato, the Amish paste tomato, the Gigante Lisco tomato. Last year's tomatoes were actually really temperamental. It took ages for them to do anything at all. So I don't know. I think a lot of people had that problem as far as I'm aware. If you were one of those people as well, let me know in the comments. What we ended up doing, because we had a big load of green tomatoes still at the end of November, bearing in mind that area at the end of our garden is an area that I can grow tomatoes in. But last year, at the end of November, we still had a load of green tomatoes, so we just ended up putting them in a big paper bag, put them in a drawer, and they all ripened lovely. So that's a good tip, so if that ever happens to you. But they're my tomatoes. I've also got these from last year, which is an American Dwarf Wonder Pea and an extra early pedigree dwarf pea. They can be sown in February, but I might sow some early ones for pea shoots. Because they're old ones, I can just scatter those across a big seed tray and use those to cut pea shoots from. So I might end up doing that, but not today. I've also got, there's a Rosacrone pea from last year as well. And then this year I've also got salad radish. I haven't grown these for a long time, mainly because Andy doesn't like them. But I do, so I'm going to grow radish this year. So apparently these are red and white salad radishes, elongated but still round, from France and quick growing. I used to grow these ages ago, before I even had a garden. I used to grow these in a little flower pot outside one of my early flats. I do love a radish. That's good fun. So in March, I'm just going to not talk through these, and I'm trying to show you what I've got for March, and then it should go a bit quicker. So that's what I'm planning to grow this year. And in my garden, I'm going to do a little bit of overhauling of the landscaping, but not too much. I still want it to be a garden that I've got space to sit in, which will mean that the patio area remains a patio area. And there's a path going down towards the patio area, which I'm thinking of taking the flags up on the path and instead laying a slightly thinner row of bricks on their side, which will still give me space for walking, and also I do have a wheelbarrow, which is handy when we get log deliveries and stuff. So I'll still be able to use that, but by narrowing that path, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to plant not just flowers, but things like beetroot, spring onions and stuff on the side of that path to really maximise that space. Also next to the path, I've got a row of what is currently soil covered in pebbles on top of some kind of old weed barrier. That was like that when we moved in. It used to have like pots and things on it, which up until recently it has, but because I want to grow food, I'm going to take all of those pebbles up as soon as it becomes a bit warmer and the insects that are underneath there aren't going to die of cold and frost. I'm going to take all of those up, take up that plastic matting that's underneath there, that weed barrier, and I'm going to make those into a bed, or maybe two beds with a path in between, so I can get to the area behind, because there is a path behind those pebbles which I'm going to put pots on. I'm going to have my blueberries on there. I might have some pots of, I don't know, carrots maybe. I'll have potatoes in bags because I've grown those successfully in bags before. So they'll be behind this now newly created bed. I'm hopeful that that should at least double what I've been able to grow before. And also it'll make sure that I do have areas to grow annual vegetables that have the access of the sun. To maximise my space even more, I'm not just going to be growing on the ground, I'm going to try and grow as vertically as possible. So I ordered the other week some arches. There were 2 arches in a pack and it only came to something like $17.99. for the two of them, which I thought was all right. So one of them I'm going to have towards the house as an entrance into the growing part of the garden. And on there I'm going to hopefully have climbing beans, because even though it's shady, it's not full shade. It does get evening sun, gets a bit of morning sun. So I'm hoping that the beans will grow over there nicely and make a nice attractive arch as well as a productive one. And in the garden, on that newly created bed that was pebbles, that is now pebbles, I'm hopefully going to have on the kind of 90-degree angle to the other arch, in that bed I'm going to have another arch which will create a walkway to my it's like a mini shed that I've got, which I'm hoping to grow squash up. I've been doing a bit of research and I am hopeful that the Hokkaido squash, which I have got, yes, the Hokkaido winter squash, I'm hopeful that that will grow over the arch, and they're really big arches as well. So because I knew I was going to start sowing early, onions indoors, yeah, and then in February I'll be starting tomatoes and peas off, because I knew they were going to be indoors. I went and bought some new seed trays. The other ones that I've got have been outside forever and they will be covered in slugs. So I got some new ones because I knew these ones were going to be indoors. And also the other ones are broken, which isn't great. So I treated myself to some new ones. This one is just a very solid like propagation cover, and also a separate base tray. Doesn't have holes in this one because, as you can see, my idea is that I'm going to use toilet rolls to plant some things in, and then they can all go in there as and when I get more. And then this one is a standard seed cells and lid, just from a garden centre. It was B&Q, I'm not sponsored. There are other garden centres out there. This is just one that was close by and I happened to be able to get some the other day. Ideally, I'd like some which are a bit longer lasting than this. These are so thin, but I'm going to look after them and hopefully they'll last me for as long as possible. The good thing about this one is that it comes with a little lid as well. It'll keep moisture in and hopefully keep a little bit of heat up in there as well. The things that I'm sowing at the moment, so the onions, don't need great temperatures to germinate. Apparently they only need like 14 degrees C. And as cold as my house is, I think I'm going to be able to keep that in this room especially. This room gets a lot of the sun of the day and is the warmest, it's the brightest, and also with the heating on as well, because it is January, I think they're going to do all right. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to do these yet. First thing I'm going to do is fill these up with multi-purpose compost, and it's a peat-free multi-purpose. Ideally, I would have sieved this. I couldn't find my sieve in the garden, so I am just putting it into this bottom water tray and breaking it up with my hands. To be honest, when I've been sowing things before, I've never sieved it. So I'm only saying that because I've been watching YouTube videos recently as well, and that's what they recommend to do. But I've never done that before. Also, I've never sown them indoors before. I normally do this in the garden, but it's dark now. And, you know, I thought it'd be nice, but I'm sensing this is going to be a messy endeavour. Right, so these are filled. I've just pushed the soil into there to make sure that there was enough for the roots to go in. Recently on YouTube, I've been getting really into watching Charles Dowding. If you haven't watched him, I can recommend it. Also, there's some more YouTubers that I would recommend. I can't remember the names of the channels, but I will link them in the video description if you want to have a look at those as well. I am interested in Charles Dowding because he does the no dig method, which it just sounds amazing anyway. And I'm very interested in the way he grows some of his food. So especially onions and beetroot, I've seen him do this, where instead of growing 1 or 2 per plug, he'll put 5 or 6 per plug, and he'll plant that out in a little clump. And then he'll pick the biggest of the clump when it gets to being the size you want, and the other ones will continue to grow in that clump. I thought that was genius, and if that works, that could really work for my small space. So I'm going to do that here. And let's have a look. When do they harvest? In June, July. I'm going to do a bunch. A bunch of onions, spring onions. These are spring bunching onions. So let's have a look what it says, but I'm probably going to put about 5 per plug in here because I'm going to want some of these for spring onions as well. And then in the summer, I'll be growing them for bulbs the next spring. I'm not going to sow them in the whole tray. I'll maybe do half for the onions, and then I've got enough to start off some tomatoes in this, but I've also got my other growing tray as well that I can use. So yeah, and I'm going to do the Charles Dowding method of putting a few. I'm not paying any attention to what it says in the back of there. I'm not out for growing prize-winning sized onions. I just want a lot. I want as many as I can. So here they are. I've popped the lid on to keep the heat and the moisture in, and I'm going to put these in the window to catch the sun and wait for them to germinate. I will of course be updating you, and if you'd like to follow along on my journey of experimentation into trying to make my small mid-terraced garden in Sheffield a productive one for food, then please do subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you'll get notified whenever a new video goes live, and we will carry on this journey together. So hopefully I will catch you in the next one. But until then, happy gardening.